So we're gonna dive into our first song. I'm gonna invite Misa and Marcus to come on up here, and we're looking at freedom in the context today of an evolving understanding. And so this song for me is all about that evolution that we are continually being called towards.
One day, when the glory comes, it'll be ours, it will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure, we will be sure. Oh, glory, glory, oh, glory, oh.
Hands to the heavens, no man, no weapon formed against. Yes, glory is destined. Every day women and men become legends. Sins that go against our skins become blessings. The movement is a rhythm to us. Freedom is like religion to us. Justice is juxtaposition in us. Justice for all just ain't specific enough. One son died, his spirit is revisiting us. True and living in us. Resistance is us. That's why Rosa sat on the bus. That's why we walk through America with our hands up. When it go down, we woman and man up. They say stay down, and we stand up. Shots, we on the ground, the camera panned up. King pointed to the mountaintop, and we ran up.
The war is won, we will be sure, we will be sure. Oh, glory, glory, oh, glory, glory, glory. Now the war is not over, victory isn't won, and we'll fight on to the finish. Then when it's all done, we'll cry glory, 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 glory. We'll cry glory, 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 glory.
Selma's now for every man, woman, and child. Even Jesus got his crown in front of a crowd. They march with the torch, we gon' run with it now. Never look back, we done gone hundreds of miles. From dark roads he rose to become a hero. Facing the League of Justice, his power was the people. Enemy is lethal, a king became regal. Saw the face of Jim Crow under a bald ego. The biggest weapon is to stay peaceful. We sing our music is the cuts that we bleed through. Somewhere in the dream we had an epiphany. Now we write the wrongs of our history. No one can win the war individually. It takes the wisdom of the elders and young energy. Welcome to the story we call the victory. By standing strong in love, our eyes will see the glory.
One day, when the war is won, it'll be ours, it'll be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure, we will be sure. Oh, glory, glory, whoa, glory, whoa, glory, glory.
Alice Page and Misa Malone. I love that Misa started preaching. I can just go home right now. Oh, one day. You know, it was a beautiful moment in consciousness when the Declaration of Independence was signed. It was a beautiful moment in a shifting of what is possible. Government by the people, for the people. Unfortunately, the definition of people was white men who owned land. But the idea, and what we deal with in unity is we understand the power of divine ideas. We understand that the experience that we may be having in the world is the experience we're having in the world. But that behind that, underneath that, expressing as that experience is a divine idea that is immutable, unchangeable, that is divinity itself. And freedom is a divine idea. And it lives in us. It's in our DNA. It's in our very cells. It is the blueprint of who we are and how we are called to show up in the world. And Nelson Mandela, I believe, said it best when he said, "There is no easy walk to freedom anywhere." And that's an internal journey of freedom. And that's the larger understanding of freedom that exists outside here in the world that we live in. Can I get an amen on that? The limitations that we place on ourselves, the way we cage ourselves in with what we think is possible, with what we think is available to us, with what we think is ours to be and to do, and then we take all those deciding things, white, female, landowner, black, we take them and we put those limitations out into the world. And we forget that there is no other. There is nothing out there in the world that is not actually alive within us. And I know that that's hard. Like, I look out at the world and I continually say to myself, oh boy, that's me. All those things that I'm uncomfortable with, all those things that I wish did not exist, somehow, because I am a part of all of this, they are alive in me in some way. They are living in me in some way. They are impacting me in some way. They are informing the choices that I make in some way. And for some of us, that sense of freedom is larger than others. And we make this mistake that we think that because I understand freedom on a certain level, that everybody understands freedom on that level. Well, let me tell you, I had my beautiful wife, and she's like, oh no, what is she gonna say now? My beautiful wife, who is black, is a daily reminder for me of the freedom that I take for granted. The freedoms that even as a white lesbian, so there's people with a lot more freedom than me, right? The freedoms that I get to take for granted that she never gets to take for granted. And as I get to see that, I have been changed. I have been changed, and I understand my role in the assumption that my awareness of how free I am is available to everybody. Well, it is in consciousness, but the challenges that we run up against in real time are very different for each of us. And to become aware of that. So freedom, the definition of it, the power to act without hindrance or restraint. Who would you be if you weren't hindered or restrained in any way whatsoever? Just close your eyes for a second. And even just try to imagine what that might feel like. to not be hindered by your race, by your biological sex, by your sexual orientation, by your economic situation, by your age, by your weight, by whatever. Who would you be if you were free of all restraint? So the invitation, at least for me, around Independence Day, and I love Reverend Elizabeth in her meditation this morning called it Interdependence Awareness Day. And I'm going to touch a little bit on that too, because of course Elizabeth and I are totally in sync. You are being invited to liberate yourself. And in the process of liberating yourself, you are being invited to the larger purpose, which is to liberate the world. So you can begin with your own authentic voice. What is it like to actually speak from your authentic voice, freely, without shame, without self-judgment, without self-doubts? What does that mean? How are you going to show up? And how does that impact your heart? How does that free your heart? Who would you be if you freed your heart space? If you actually listened to your heart? Would you be able to walk past the homeless person sitting on the street in the same way as you are able to right now if you truly listen to your heart? What would that move you to become? What would that move you to step into and to own about how we are called to be different in the world? And as we open our hearts, it then allows us to free our bodies. When our hearts are open, we get to just love freely, love passionately, love openly. We get to stand in the power and strength that are these magnificent body temples that are temporary. They are not us. Can we remember that and feel free in our body? Regardless of the limitation that you think you might have. I lived in chronic pain for 10 years. My freedom was right here, even if it wasn't right here in my body. I knew I was free. That is what we are invited into again and again and again. And what that gets to then unlock is our creativity, the creative spark. That is the place that lives between freedom and our wounding. We take those wounds and we think that they are us. We think that they define us. We think that they are who we are called to be in the world, that we are limited by those wounds. And when we can unleash our authentic voice and our heart and bring our body into an alignment, and all of a sudden, creativity is there. And where there is creativity, there is infinite potential. In between freedom and our wounds is our creative capacity to show up, to evolve, to grow. I think back to how forward-thinking in so many ways our founding fathers were with what they actually put down on paper. And then I think about how it was then limited by their life's understanding, their small understanding of what was possible. So they had this moment of creative spark, and then it stopped. It didn't continue forward. It just sort of stalled out there. And then that baton gets picked up by others. That baton gets picked up because what we're talking about is the evolution of consciousness. So ultimately, this idea of freedom and democracy is all one idea. Even though it's happening and unfolding over time, it's still the same divine idea. And there are different people that have carried the torch of freedom at different points. And my invitation to all of us right now is that it's everyone's job now. That's what we are being called into. That's the next stage of our evolving consciousness. Because what we're being invited to is freedom to love and to serve at the edge of love. right there at the very edge of all that we think we can give, of all that we think that we are, of all that we think is possible, right at that edge, we are being invited to step into our creativity and to say, there is always more. There is always more. I was sharing last week about how amazing it is that in my lifetime, gay rights have gone from Stonewall to gay marriage to trans rights. Like in my lifetime, there is always more. We are nowhere near done, not on any level. How complacent have you become? Where are you just sitting back? Because maybe you're free. Maybe you personally feel as if you are free, but that's not all that we are involved in here. Pledge of Allegiance says, indivisible, indivisible with liberty and justice for all. Do we really live into that? We literally wrote into our Constitution that black men count for 3/5 of a human being. How, on any level, is that liberty and justice for all? And don't even get me started on the women not even being in there at all, right? They're even less than that, right? So we have this paradigm that we think is operating, that it's me first and then you next. That it's me first, and then if there's anything left over, I'm going to include you in whatever's left over. And I'm inviting us all to shift that paradigm. What if it's me first, you first? Because what we know and we believe in Unity's teaching is that there is only one. You are not actually separate from me. You are me. Everything, everyone out there is me. So really, the only thing we can stand as is me first, you first, simultaneously. What's possible if we actually allow ourselves to get rid of this idea that there is an other? To get rid of this idea that there's only so much freedom that can go around. There's only so much freedom. So we're going to get freedom over here, and then we'll see if we can then get freedom over here. And I understand the evolution of consciousness. I understand that things take longer in time and in space than they do in our consciousness, right? Our consciousness is quick energy. And when we're manifesting something in time and space, it innately slows down because it becomes something we can touch. But in our consciousness, are we standing in me first, you first simultaneously? Are we actually standing in that? Because if we're not, it's never going to manifest in time and space. It's never actually going to show up. There's always going to be somebody on the outside. And yet, there is no outside. All those studies that have been coming out showing that racism is not just damaging and hard and painful on the Black and BIPOC community, it's horrifying what it does to the white community. But we don't pay attention to that. Because we somehow think that there is this great division. Indivisible. Indivisible. So, Nelson Mandela was really my inspiration for a lot of this. I kept going back to him, so I sort of started with him, and I'm going to bracket and end with him here. For to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. And this from a country that was torn apart by the horrors of apartheid. Torn apart. When we in our country think, oh, all of this is just too hard, it's too deep, we can't ever really fix this or heal this. All I keep saying is we have a living demonstration in South Africa of what is possible. But it required that everybody own up. Everybody own up. Whether they actually did something physically themselves or not was not the point. Everybody in South Africa had to own up to the part that they played in a system that was not equal. This is what I believe is the next great evolution in consciousness that we are being called to. This is that beautiful next generation of freedom fighters. And I want to invite each of us into this, because what we know at Unity is that if it's happening within us, it is everywhere present. So where are you holding yourself as other? Where is there a part of you that you have shoved off into the corner and said, oh, no, I don't want to look at that. I don't want to be that. I don't want to understand that. Because that part of you is not free. And if that part of you is not free, then nowhere is there true freedom. This is our work. And there's such joy in it, because all I can say is that when you liberate your authentic voice, and you liberate your heart, and you liberate your body, and you stand in your creative joy, and you are literally serving on the edge of love, there is so much beauty there. There is so much grace there. And as Dave was speaking in his Why I Give, there's so much connection there. Deep, true, meaningful connection. So I mentioned this last week, and this is kind of my thing right now. I'm standing in this idea that this is, we've had generations of personal authenticity. We actually have a generation that's called the me generation, right? Personal authenticity. So what happens if we take that personal authenticity, the value of my voice, of my experience, of my journey, and we add this element of global solidarity into the picture? From a unity understanding that there is always more. So the more we allow freedom, the more freedom we're going to feel. The more we're going to allow ourselves to not see someone as other, the more connected we are going to feel. So, Nelson Mandela again, because I really do think that this is our national mandate right now as a country, that we can no longer turn away. That even the things that make us uncomfortable, even the things that make us not know what to do, the issue of race is so loaded in this country. Sometimes we're like a deer in the headlights, and it's across the board. Everyone that I have spoken to of all races kind of feels this shell shock. And we have to heal through this. And the only way we're going to heal through this is by paying attention, by noticing where we have limited ourselves and others, by noticing how we're shutting off our heart, by noticing where we're called to step into infinite possibility, that creative joy, where anything, literally anything, is possible. So Nelson Mandela says, no single person can liberate a country. You can only liberate a country if you act as a collective. And this is the evolution that is arising within our culture right now. And I am inviting all of us to be on that leading edge, to lead on the very edge of love. So I'm going to invite Misa up here. So this is an original song that Misa and Ryan and Carl have put together, and it's going to lead us into our time of meditation.